Hello, this is Catherine Dubberly, the Answer Lady. I'm a big fan of Kiss Looms. I greatly enjoy mine, and I am cooperating with Kelly at Kiss Looms to make you a playlist of all the basic techniques that you might ever want to know on all of the looms. So welcome and enjoy.
Now we start to short row out. Those are the 4 that we have been knitting. We're going to keep knitting them, and we're going to add one more. So this row there were 5 stitches knitted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's a matter of preference whether you do or do not wrap on the way out as you short row out. It definitely makes it more sturdy. And for loom knitted socks, I almost always do. I've been more pleased with the results if I do. I think the reason is that loom knitting with the pegs and the pins that we do means that the wraps are never all that tight. And they shouldn't be. That would be hard on the yarn and the pegs. So you get better coverage if you do go ahead and wrap going both directions. There are some exceptions to whether you should short row and wrap. If you're working with very fuzzy yarns, you can omit it. I will have 3 stitches to knit off as I add a peg back this time, because I've wrapped it twice in addition to the stitch that's on it prior to coming back and knitting on the way out with my short rows. When I say they need to be knitted off at once, they don't necessarily have to be knitted off at the same exact moment. I'll show you that next time. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 that have been held and not knitted, and that should be right. Wrapping and knitting back. Now I'm going to wrap and knit this peg. If I can lift them all up and over, I will. It's just efficient, and in this case I could. We'll get these all knitted over and wrap back, and I will show you what to do if you can't get them all knitted over. Wrap. Here we come to the peg that has 3 on it, 3 loops of yarn. If they're difficult to knit over all at once, it has to all be done this stitch, but it doesn't have to be done at the same instant. 1, 2, 3, there they go. Nobody knows the difference, including you. You won't be able to see when the sock is complete which way you did that. All right, our rows are getting longer and longer. Time to wrap and return. And here we are to the peg with 3 wraps. We'll knit them all over. Let's get these all knitted over. Here they go. So I was saying something about fuzzy yarns, and I believe now that you understand what's going on well enough that you can watch and think about this at the same time. A yarn that is really fuzzy, such as Hobby Lobby Pitter Patter, if you've ever worked with that, it produces a plush, almost velour-like fabric. Certainly eyelash yarns. If you do the wrapping of the next peg over business, sometimes instead of producing a desirable effect, it makes a bumpy, unpleasant spot because of the nature of those yarns. And on the other hand, if you skip the wraps, it doesn't tend to leave the holes that you would experience with a smoother yarn, such as this one. This one's fuzzy in the general sense, but it doesn't have hair sticking out all over. Now, normally you wouldn't be making socks with fur yarn, but you might be making something like a curved collar that would require short rowing. And that's when it would help to know that you would almost always, but not absolutely always, wrap the next peg over when short rowing. And let's talk about the other things you can do with short rowing besides making a heel. The most obvious thing is making a toe. The toe will be made in just the same manner. And what I thought I would do for these socks is knit the toes and heels out of this gray and white yarn, where the body of the sock is my burgundy yarn, and I think that will be cute. Another thing is you can knit in a circle by means of short rowing. In fact, that's a good idea. I should do a circle dishcloth with you. If you knit this peg hardly ever, and this peg constantly, and everything in between is graduated, the result is a circle. It's very entertaining. Time to wrap the last of the pegs on this end. Now, a circle dishcloth is one of the times you might purposely not wrap, and you will get holes, but that would have a lacy effect. So if you say we're using cotton yarn, because that's what we normally use for dishcloths, and we did a lot of short rowing, but we didn't do any wrapping of the next pegs over, what would happen is that wherever we short rowed, little holes would form. And those little holes, if planned, would look lacy and attractive and actually help the cloth to wash. Because as you undoubtedly know, the textural features of the cloth are an important part of how well it actually does its job of scrubbing. Now on this end, it's time to wrap our final peg of the heel. Next time we'll knit it off. And we're ready to finish up on the right hand end by knitting off the very last peg and then wrapping the next one over, which I'll do after I've knitted these off. And if we did it right, we should have one peg on the left that still needs us to knit 3 strands off. And voila, we do. So we'll wrap the next peg over. It's around the corner, but that makes no difference. You wrap all the way. There is one slight difference between knitting a contrasting heel and not in how you behave. Obviously, there's a huge difference in looks, but I'm talking about knitting skills here. Let's get these knitted over. If I had done this all in red yarn, we would be back here with the red yarn coming out from here. And I've been knitting in this direction. So I would use my red yarn and wrap this peg and come on back. But I'm not using the red yarn. I'm going to cut the gray yarn. Therefore, the red yarn is in a different position. It's actually over here, coming off of this stitch. So it's going to effectively close the gap for us just by its presence. Now what I can do, in order to make the sides match, and I think I will, see, this one's been wrapped with gray. Because of what we did, this one didn't need wrapping with gray. But before I snip it, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it and then knit it over, knit the gray wrap over the next time around. So it will be more similar to what's going on the other side of the heel than it otherwise would be. The heel is now complete. Stay with me while I knit one more round with the red yarn so that you can have a little bit better look at the heel. And while I knit this round, let's review. You begin your heel on half of the pegs. You make absolutely sure that you start the heel after having completed a complete round. And you can make certain of that by checking the position of your initial yarn tail. Short row in, with every single row getting shorter to 1/3 or a little bit less of the total stitches. And again, if you don't like doing the math, I have a book to help you. Short row out till all of the original heel stitches, which is half of the total stitches, are being knitted again. Every time you come to the end of a short row, wrap the next peg over. By the time you go to knit the last rows, this will mean that 3 loops must be knitted over at the same time. And that only serves in most cases to make the heel sturdier. It doesn't cause any problems with looks or comfort. If you didn't do it, lumps would form. I mean, what am I saying? No, lumps wouldn't form, holes would form. And we're just about to finish this. I haven't done contrasting heels in a while. I'm looking forward to these socks. By the way, what I'm working with is a combination of 2 yarns. The gray and white is Mary Maxim Starlet, which I like. And the burgundy is Red Heart with Love, which is similar enough that they'll blend nicely for the project. And here's what we've got. Here's a look from the inside. After this is all off of the loom, of course, I've got the beginning and ending yarn tails from the gray yarn that I added in. And I'm going to do 2 things. One, that slip knot, I'm going to undo it. Many times I wouldn't bother to undo the knot, but right at the heel, I think it could be annoying. So I'll undo it, and then I'll weave both of the tails in invisibly, which I have shown you at other times in other videos. Okay, you got it now? You can short row. You can do it.